Hi there, I'm Veronica, your American in Portugal. Let's talk real estate. Portugal is a lovely place to live, and moving to Portugal is a dream, but it can be a nightmare if things go wrong. So, I'm going to explain the tips and tricks of buying here to protect yourself and your large investment of a home. Now, buying in Portugal is different than in the United States of America and other countries as well. Everybody has their own specifics they're used to, but there's fewer rules and processes here in Portugal. There's no title, there's no escrow. Disclosures aren't really done, and there's definitely no disclosure checklist to go through. Dual agency is very common here. There's limited oversight. And a lot of times your agents will have in-house legal. I always recommend having your own legal counsel separate from the agency. And then there's a list of other items like home inspections and appraisals. They're not standard for cash purchases. Now, that can be a little bit different when you've got a mortgage, but mortgages aren't always easy here and they take a lot of time. So you need to kind of consider the differences in that and what's right for you. Not doing everything up front here is that the courts can take a long time. So if you do need to take legal action against a problematic sale or a purchase after the close, the courts can take years to resolve this. So there's no quick fix. So how do you take the maximum protections to minimize problems? I'm here to share these helpful tips as well as some basics about moving here. Also, other things we're going to cover in this video are what I like to call the super basics. And the reason I say the super basics is because you're all in your beginning stages and you need to remember you need a visa here to live here. A travel visa is different than a visa to live here or work here or retire here. They're all slightly different. I'm not going to get into all the different visas, but just know you need one specific to who you are and what you're doing here in Portugal. And Portugal is part of the Schengen Zone. And I'll put up a map of the Schengen Zone. If you arrive into the EU, you have 90 days out of 180 that you can be in country, and then you've got to be gone. We say make a run for the border, which means you can go to Ireland, Gibraltar. There's other places you can go. You just can't stay here, okay? And in the future, don't forget, if you're here doing your reconnaissance trip, that you'll need to apply for a visa, just like we make people in America do. They have to apply for a visa even for travel, just for tourism. So that's been kicked down the road. I've been watching this, putting updates in my newsletters. Don't forget to sign up to my newsletter if you're interested in getting any of these updates. I don't have time to spam. I barely have time to make videos. So make sure you subscribe to my MailChimp. And if you go to any of my videos on YouTube in American in Portugal, just type in American in Portugal YouTube. You'll also get my resource sheet and any new information and news as it comes out, and you'll be the first to get my videos as well as private content that I only share with subscribers. So let's start in with this. So how do you find a home? Well, you're going to want a really good agent, and you're going to want an agent that lives in your area. Sometimes there'll be agencies that'll say, oh, we can go anywhere. Well, that's a real disservice to you because they're not going to know the niches and the ins and out of your little community. There was just something done recently where a lot of people are selling homes in housing projects, and housing projects are great. They're meant for those who are lower income to be able to work their way up. And it's great because they have allowed them to purchase them at a really low price. And then after a certain period of time, they can sell them. But they're selling them for way higher than they're worth, because in a project, sometimes they're not always kept up as well if there aren't people who own them, correct? So you don't want to pay double, triple, quadruple for a home that you might not be able to resell because it's in a little tougher neighborhood. So protect yourself with a local agent. I'm going to say that again, local agent. And also I'm going to speak against dual agency. What's dual agency? Dual agency is when your agent represents the buyer and they also represent the seller. The problem with this is they have all the information. They know how much the seller's willing to come down to, what they need to get for that property. And they also know what the buyer's willing to pay. So they're kind of in the middle. And no matter how honest and amazing somebody is, it's just not a good situation. In California, you need to disclose this, and you also need to go into a lot of extra paperwork, because generally most lawsuits, it's a dual agency lawsuit, unless something wasn't disclosed, of course. But those tend to be the largest lawsuits. And I was just talking to, ironically enough, a lawyer from Canada who's going to be moving here, and she was amazing, super fun to talk to. She actually does the litigation for lawsuits against real estate agents. What's the biggest thing? Dual agency. So there are some agencies who will only work on dual agency, and I completely disagree with that. So we've been working with people who want to work with them as a separate consultant. So I recommend you to an agent. An agent then goes and shows you everything locally. And what happens with that is, if they have to work with one of these companies because they've listed the property and they won't allow a buyer's agent in there, then we'll go ahead and we'll negotiate with them to be more of a representative than an agent. But unfortunately, you have to pay for that, or the seller has to pay for it, because we'll just negotiate the price down, because generally those houses don't sell because the agents just won't show them. They're not going to show to somebody who wants to have both sides and lock it down. That's not quite the right thing also for the owner, right? It's not the best thing for them. So dual agency, not my friend. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about is escrow. There's no escrow companies here. So you don't want to give your money over and have it pass through before the property's actually yours. What happens when you go into what we normally traditionally call closing is you'll go into a notary's office, or you'll have your attorney, who has a limited power of attorney to close on a house for you, go into the notary's office. And at that meeting, you walk out with the deed. So you only want to transfer money there, or have your attorney transferring it for you then. So you can do a cashier's check, but I feel comfortable with my attorney, and I send my money to my attorney, and most of our clients do that. And when you're talking about moving money, it's very important that in America, while you're home, while you're there now, make sure your funds are in an international bank that doesn't have fees to wire money here and has the best exchange rates. Because to send money over here, especially a large amount to buy a home, you're going to want to get a really good exchange rate, because here there's a lot of fees for them to do that. So you get the exchange rate back home. For me, I already had my investments in Charles Schwab. If you have investments with Charles Schwab, you can also check with Fidelity. They gave me the best industrial exchange rate to exchange my money with no fees. Okay, so they gave me their industrial rate, because they're not there to make, they're not a money exchanger. They're not there to make money off your exchanges, off of your exchanging fees. They're there to help you with your large financial investments, and that's where they make their money. So they do that as a courtesy, and then they can wire the money over here. My wire fee was $25. So you definitely make out, versus trying to use an outside company. Some people love companies like Wise and Revolt, but there's only a certain amount of money you can move at a time. So if you're moving enough to buy a house, especially if in your 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 range, that could be a problem. So it's better just to convert at your best rate you can get in America without fees. And from that point, then you send the transfer, a wire transfer over directly to I say the attorney, because my attorney has a business account, and with the business account, there's no fees. If you bring money into your account here, a lot of times there's fees. My bank wanted 5%. So you have to think, on a $200,000 or $300,000 loan, that 5% is going to add up. Do you want to give your bank here $15,000 just for moving your money here? So again, that's just a simple tip. You're going to do it however you see fit, but that will help. And talk to your attorney about that, because your attorney is essentially going to be your escrow for you, and he'll put your money in client accounts. This is where it's really important you trust your attorney, right? So if your attorney is in-house at your agent's place, and especially if they're private agencies, essentially all the money's in the same place. So I don't prefer that. For me, counsel is outside counsel. He only talks to the agent when we allow him to talk to the agent or the agencies. The agent that I use the most, because I probably end up in the East Algarve the most, but I have trained agents all over the Algarve, and I'm training up the coast of Portugal as well, that want to work with expats and want to learn how to do the right things with expats, like the program that we've set up, where we essentially then have an escrow because the lawyer is going to be dispersing the funds for you. In addition to that, you're going to want to get a home inspection, and you're going to want to ask your agent to do a disclosure list. If they don't know what that is, get a new agent. They can definitely import. I used to train agents here, so it's very easy for me. I have all my list of forms. I import the forms. I use the standard disclosure forms, the AVID, which is also the disclosure form of the agent doing a visual inspection. And then we use a home inspection company that's tied in with a survey company. Why do you need a survey as well as a home inspection? Well, a survey is going to look at the property itself and compare them to the records at City Hall, because there's no publicly accessible recorder's office where all the information's available just to the general public. The recorder can go in on that home and request to make sure that any permits or updates have been done. And then he'll also check finances and make sure there's no liens against the property, which would be kind of what title would do, right? No title insurance here. So title insurance back home, if you didn't completely understand what title insurance was back home, it's to make sure that there's no liens against the property. And then they put their word down and ensure if anything happens in the future that pops up against title, that you would be protected. That's what the insurance is, that they're going to take the hit. Let's say a mechanic did some work on the property and wasn't paid for that work. He files a lien against the property. And if there's a gap in when it's filed in America, that's what title insurance is for. For here, they could file it. If it's not disclosed, if it's not caught, boom, it's against the property. So you're liable for that. And you want to make sure that everything's paid. You want to make sure that their property taxes are up to date. You want to make sure your attorney is doing the prorated amounts. It's not even standard to do prorated amounts. They might try to make you pay for the whole year. And let's say you move in December. You're like, why should you pay property tax for the whole year? You'll pay December's property tax when you move in, and then again, prorated if halfway through the month. That's pretty standard back in the States, but it's not standard here. So there's a lot of little nuances, a lot of little moving parts, and that's not even a lot of them. That's just a few components. I mean, one surveyor came back and he'll go to the City Hall first, went to Tavira, where our clients were trying to purchase the property. And unfortunately, the permits didn't match. He asked the owner, hey, it looks like there's been some changes that would have required a permit. And they said, yeah, there was, but we bought the property without permits. So we thought, no problem, somebody else will buy it without permits. Problem was they didn't disclose that. So if it wasn't disclosed, you might pay a lot less for that property, because you don't want to be hit with fees for not having the permit. And in a historical area, if you're meant to put that, you're now the new owner and you like the fancy new kitchen or all the exterior upgrades, and they tell you, no, you have to put it back and restore it to the way it was. That may not even be the house that you want. And now you have to pay any fines, fees, and restore it. So protect yourself, especially in those historical areas. And if you want to do projects, if you want to change things in a historical area, you might want to do deep investigations before you purchase them, because they can take a long time to get approved. And so if you think, oh, I'm going to change a door and a window and you could be in trouble. So just be aware of those things. Historical areas are lovely. I would love to live in one. I absolutely would. I don't know about personally taking on a project like that. We do have some lovely developers who are really good at taking on those projects and have a team like this. Training, I trained agents in the United States of America. I really prefer this over running around and looking at the houses and setting the appointments, although I will go occasionally with clients. And when I say clients, it's because I pass along the referrals to a legal team, to a financial person, to really good agents that have agreed to work the best way for us that we're used to. So when I say us, they're doing all the work. And so in order to get a consultation with me, you fill out my questionnaire, and my questionnaire is linked in the brochure that I have about Moving to Portugal Part 1. So Moving to Portugal Part 1, I'm creating an ebook, and Part 1 is about really kind of thinking through why you want to move here. And it covers the why and the how and some things you really need to think about. And then you can also share those with your agent later. And in that ebook, there is a link that links to my questionnaire that you can go through online. You can do it on your phone, takes a few minutes, lots of drop downs that are easy to figure out what you want and where you want to live. You have to think, are we going to bring dogs? Do I want the ocean? Do I want the country? Do I want land? Do I want to be in the city center? How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Do I prefer these beautiful historical towns, or do I want the new modern one? Do I want authentic, or do I want touristy? And not saying there's bad to either. Some of the touristy ones have a lot going on. They're vibrant, party all the time. It's like living in Vegas, right? So you can live in Vegas, or you can live in the country. You can live in a small historical town. You can live in the mountains. There's so many places to live here. And then I also have a video on how to travel around Portugal. And that one kind of explains north to south, flying into Lisbon, Faro, the Algarve, getting around by train, a lot of the apps you'll need. So the train app, WhatsApp, a lot of those things. So it's really good to watch those videos. And it's great that you're watching, because I think if you don't have the time to watch and really learn before you get here, you're going to spend a lot of time playing cleanup, or you'll be spending a lot of money, or you could end up in a lawsuit and maybe not have an apartment or home. Again, making sure that you use professionals at all times. This is going to save you so much stress, so much money. Proper attorney who is used to working with people from your country, a proper tax person who is a chartered accountant or has staff that's also chartered, that understands how to work with people from your country. I had a video up with my favorite financial guy, but I took it down because things changed. Things are always changing. I can't stay on top of all the changes from legal and from financial. So it's important that you have professionals looking in on you and checking in with you. And it's really important that when you're getting your fiscal number and when you're meeting up with your accountant, that you have conversations online before you get here, because you have to realize there are things, if you move here and decide your property, you're going to sell your property back where you're from, that could be a capital gains hit here. And people always go, oh, but I'm exempt. And in reference to America, there's the amount of money that each spouse is allowed to have and not get hit for capital gains, on your federal income tax. But there's global income that's considered in Portugal, and that can make a hit for you here. So if you decided to rent first, come over here while you're getting your residency, and sell after you have your residency, that could be a problem. So it's important that you kind of line your ducks up in a row. So let's talk about actually buying your house. Let's say we've pre-qualified you. You know exactly where you want to buy. We've matched you up with the perfect agent. And now you've gone around, you've done your due diligence, you've found a place you want to live. And then now it's time to put on the offer. So when I say due diligence, that means that we've already done all of the disclosures, as much investigating as we can do at this point, right? So now it's time to put in an offer. They kind of do a verbal offer first. They call the other agent and say, so they're looking about this much. Do you think they'd accept it? Yes, no, it goes back and forth. You finally agree on something verbally. Doesn't really mean anything. It is an offer. It has been accepted, but it's nothing until you get the offer letter, which is the CPCV. Now, between this stage, some agencies may want you to put what's called a reservation. I'm not a fan of this. And depending on who the company is, sometimes I'll give a thumbs up and sometimes a thumbs down. One agency did want us to put down a reservation and really pushed before we could get in to do a survey. And with a reservation, you could lose that money. It can be 10,000 euros, it can be 20,000 euros. So they say that's just to take it off the market so nobody else can look at it. To me, if you lose it and have to walk away, you lose it and have to walk away. But one property that we found out later, they would not budge on this reservation, wouldn't let us in to look at it with a surveyor or inspector first. And later we did find out there were problems with it. So good to know that we did the right thing and advised our client not to put that money forward, because good luck getting it back, right? In some cases, the attorney can hold the money and write it in the contract that, you know, if you renege, that they can get the money. But the reality is if you're at that point and your lawyer's involved, why not write the contract, right? So the CPCV, the offer, that's where you put everything down just like you would do back in the States, and you put a deposit down. So you need to make sure you're serious at this point, because if you fail to perform as the buyer, you can lose double what you put down. So let's say you put down 10%, you could lose double that. Let's say $300,000 place, you could lose at 10%, that's $30,000. You could lose double that. You could lose 60 if you just gave up on the process and walked from it. So you need the attorney writing a really good contract and making sure you fully vetted the property before you pass over any money, okay? And then when it comes to closing, the process between the offer letter and closing, you do all of your due diligence, you do all your checklists, and then you go ahead and move forward and close. And then with closing and making your offer letter, it's important that you do an inventory list, because they will take the light bulbs, they'll take the light fixtures and the light bulbs. So you need to make a list of every single thing you want them to keep in. And if they're going to be leaving furniture, I also highly suggest that you and your agent takes pictures. So you take pictures, and especially if you know you're going to make an offer, go through, take pictures of every single room, take videos, and then you can even identify in the offer letter, here's exactly what we're purchasing. And you can add in the pictures so they know we're purchasing this, you know, beautiful leather couch, in case the leather couch is gone and there's some old beat up one, right? You just can't say couch in the living room. So it's best to do your due diligence on that if you're buying furniture, okay? Get your money transferred in a timely manner. Don't go to closing and say, oh, I'm going to transfer my money today, because even if you have it in euros and ready to wire over, it can take time for that wire to go from Europe to here. The banks, sometimes there's intermediary banks, and everybody loves to sit on that money overnight for the overnight interest rates. So get your money over sooner, not later. And some places won't even let you make the offer without knowing that your attorney has the money in hand. And that's only fair because in a market where there is no burst bubble yet here, things that are good and well priced are going as soon as they're listed. So you're really not in the driver's seat to be buying here, but in a lot of places, they are lower cost, definitely lower cost than America. Portugal is not the lowest place in the world to live. Do remember that. Some magazines have put out that, oh, Portugal's the lowest price. No. You know, you've still got Ecuador, Guatemala, Mexico. There's other countries that are lower cost. For Europe, this is definitely one of the better priced places in Europe, which is part of the EU. It's a huge variety in pricing. I mean, from the West Algarve It can almost be double the price to the East Algarve. I live in the East Algarve. It's still very undiscovered. And so our prices haven't gone crazy yet. Plus, it's not as touristy. So there you have it, my friends. Don't forget, go to my American and Portugal YouTube videos for more. And when you're there, hit like and subscribe to my MailChimp so that way you can get my newsletters. And welcome to Portugal, my friends.